Hi, my name is Lynda. I'm a painter, an art teacher, and a former jewelry designer. It was just basically an experiment. I didn't have a lot of preconceived notion of what I'd be doing, but the color scheme, I have to say, there was some thought involved with that. I'm pretty much using the complementary colors yellow and purple, and then I've thrown in some more warm colors like the red and orange. I'm working with acrylic on paper, so acrylic paint will dry, and then when you add another color next to it, there's no bleeding going on. So that was one thing I was looking at for this piece. I didn't want bleeding everywhere. There's no bleeding here. I let the painting or the paint bleed a little bit to see what would happen. The focal point, you really kind of go into the painting, but then you have these tendrils that kind of go out and around the painting. It was just kind of a fun experiment to see where can I go with the color scheme and where can I go with the design. Some areas are so clean and so like that, and then there's some bleeds in there, and I didn't know if it looked like two different paintings or if it worked, or I didn't know your thoughts about that.
If you have just one, it's monotonous.
Right.
And so I like that you have the two in there. I think it's just a matter of balancing them a little bit more. Going back to the suggestion about the collage, I think it'd be fun to play with translucent pieces of paper. Like, those clear gels that they use for film lighting, and they're colored, put them on top of each other so we could see through them. I think that would be really fun. And then a lot of those papers, you can paint on them. You can put like ink wash or watercolor on top of them. Another thing that you could think about is letting some of the areas with the bleeds being bigger and more dominant, because this is actually one of my favorite bleeds that you have, because here the distinction between this shape and the bleed is not that obvious. Like, this almost disappears because this is so dramatic. Whereas I feel like if I were to say that there was a battle between the bleeds and the cutouts are winning. I mean, the cutouts are really dominant. So I almost wonder if you just need more of this. Like, maybe this entire corner is one giant bleed where all of these cutouts just lose. They're just out. It's a pretty specific color scheme. It's not like you have every color of the rainbow in the painting. So what were you thinking about the color?
Sometimes I look at the color wheel and I say, okay, I'm going to focus on analogous colors. So it could be the warm colors in this, like red, orange, yellow, orange. And then I like to throw in the complements. Say the complement of yellow is purple. So I do that quite often in my artwork because it gives it a kind of a nice, interesting, harmonious vibration of the contrast, but they're very harmonious at the same time.
Sure.
So I did think about the color scheme, and then the design was, say, more spontaneous, but the color scheme was definitely pre-planned.
I mean, I'll tell you, one of my favorite sections of color is this, which you wouldn't think, because this is not one of your flashier sections of the painting. I mean, I feel like this is flashy because these colors in here, like this rich, deep purple, this like almost blood-like red, this like really light tinted lavender, it's like this little breath of fresh air. To me, this is an oasis. I feel like this would be great if you had more of this bright yellow, because this yellow to me is also an oasis. So if you had all bright yellow here, the light lavender over here, because it's almost like this is overwhelming. Like, it's so powerful that it's almost like these are being drowned out for that reason. I think it would be also good for you to explore more muted colors that are really like puke green. Like, nobody ever wants to use those colors because they're ugly and they're muddy, but they make these colors look better. Like, the way I describe it is a muted color is like a pile of dirt. Okay, it's ugly. Who wants to look at that? And a color like this, which is brightly saturated, is like a little ruby sitting in that pile of dirt. And so when you look at that ruby in the pile of dirt, it looks gorgeous. Whereas if you have a big pile of rubies, it's like, well, it's dime a dozen, I think in a painting, you have to assign roles to different parts, like to say, okay, you're the spectacle. You're who everybody showed up to see. You're the side act. You're there to support and be supplementary. You're very important, but you're not the main act. I like that you are very ambitious, that you do push yourself, and that in all of your pieces, there is this resolve to them.
Now that's a great comment, because I know I struggle with, say, even value. Like, do I have enough value changes in my piece? So if you have the dirt, the muddy area, then, the purple, the red will bing, pop out.
Yeah. I do think that you learn from every piece. So even if you're not super thrilled about this painting, you learned something from it
Right.
because you ran the whole race. You didn't quit in the middle. One of the biggest compliments you can get is to say, wow, you are really onto something. Keep developing it. Let's see where you are in a year or two.
Because I've been wondering about that. I haven't done a whole lot of painting lately, but just say where, with all the work I've done, it's kind of morphed into certain areas, and I'm like, where do I want to go now? I'm interested to see what I'll do next.
One of the things that I love about this painting is it's so dynamic in terms of composition, because you have this incredible just explosion of all of these different fluid marks. I love that a lot of them go off the page. This yellow one goes all the way up to the top. This one pushes up this way. These go down to this corner. This big purple one comes down here. So what you've done really well with this composition is you've given us a reason to want to travel throughout the whole thing. There are references to different images. I mean, you never really get specific enough that I can really nail down exactly what it is. I almost see letters.
I think I was just fooling around in Word, just the program Microsoft Office Word. And they have like it's called Word Art. And I just took some letters and I just kind of twisted them around and 3D'd them. And I thought, that might be kind of interesting to compile a collage, so to speak, with just these certain images. And to tell you the truth, this is probably one of them, and that might be an and sign. I expanded some, I squeezed some in, or you can expand it. Like, say, this is probably a large end of one of those, possibly.
Right.
It's almost like I had this as the center point, so I kind of built out almost like a pinwheel, I guess, is that, and made it sort of like the focal as it's kind of coming out from like a central point. And then I can twist these around. So, these are all going the same way, but I wanted to have some go the other way, because if it's all going the same way, then
it's really boring. I'm fascinated by that. I mean, I had no idea that a piece like this would begin on a computer. The choice of the ampersand or the S or whatever letter you're using, it feels a little arbitrary. Like, I wish there was a more cohesive reason why it's an ampersand, why it's an S. Because I feel like so much of this piece is about the look of it, like the visual of it is so powerful and strong. I'm craving for the concept to be a little bit more substantial.
I think I did experiment with certain letters, and some translated better than others. And I did another piece like with the Q, so you have the circle with the tail, which is kind of interesting. And S's, it has a kind of a nice flow shape to it. Another thought would be to use different fonts. Because
that's what I was going to ask you. Did you use one font or several?
I think you can only use one font with this program, but that would be something to explore. How can I use a different font, whether it's like Roman numeral or, because fonts are really fascinating.
Well, because I was even thinking about like using calligraphy, like those copperplate, those swirly letters. I guess what I'm always looking for in the artwork is what was the initial idea and how does that get translated throughout the piece. What I like about your work so much is you seem so willing to just go with the flow. You have this incredible flexibility to recognize when something is happening, when you should run with it. I think that's great.